I'm Brad King, and this is Stories in Steel. On this episode of Stories in Steel, we sit down with Chris Dunlop and discuss his transformation from custom painter and pinstriper to world-renowned automotive artist. We talk about his beginnings in body shops and working his way from doing commissioned illustrations to controlling his own destiny with his own rules. We also talk about using social media marketing as another form of art. All right, let's do this thing. No, you gotta sit down. You gotta sit down.
You need to heal. Just now.
Does it work? Okay. Good afternoon, Chris.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for letting me come down and have a little chat with you down here in your studio.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, a lot of people know you. You're Pinstripe Chris on Instagram, and you got a pretty good following. You've been doing car art for a while and do some amazing things.
Thanks.
So, have you always been a car guy? Is that kind of your go-to when you were a kid?
Always loved cars, and was too young to drive them, so the only thing I could do was either draw them or play with Hot Wheels. So that's the only way I could do car things.
So how far back are we talking here? You're a little guy?
Yeah, definitely doing drawings in elementary school and middle school. I started drawing really, really young. I don't know when they started being like good, but drawn
right
the whole way through. Yeah.
So. Did anybody in your family have cars? I mean, what was your inspiration for cars? Just magazines, stuff you saw on TV?
Yeah, it's actually a really good question because nobody had cars. Nobody had anything cool. As a matter of fact, where I grew up, nobody has anything cool because cars and bikes are so seasonal on the East Coast. So it must have been magazines at the time when like Motor Trend actually would have been an actual good magazine or DuPont Registry. So the closest glimpse you could get anything like pre-internet was just going to 7-Eleven and grabbing a magazine and looking at tiny little pictures of cars that were getting ready to come out. Yeah, that's about it.
So you weren't in hot rod and car craft? You weren't looking at that? You were looking at more newer?
I was a bit. I think younger I liked a lot more American classic stuff because I just felt like European stuff was just like such a high tier above. Where I grew up, there was a lot more hot rod and classic like American stuff. So that was a little bit more my wheelhouse. Most of the people that I knew with like their family or their parents, they had a car, something cool. It was definitely like a 60s or 50s car for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. It wasn't until later that I even found a whole lot more appeal in European sports cars and exotics and stuff.
Okay, you got into you're doing the artwork. So did you start with art? I mean, was that what you were doing for a living, or what were you doing from the beginning?
Not initially. Like the earliest part of car things for me was working in the collision industry. I started out as a painter's helper, and then eventually I became a painter in the collision industry. And later got a little bit more access to custom cars and doing hot rod stuff. And I was never like a builder. I was always like a body and paint person. And then that slowly kind of morphed into an interest in doing airbrushing or pinstriping. Somebody else that I worked with had always suggested to me. I'd never thought about airbrushing or pinstriping until somebody suggested, hey, you should try pinstriping.
You should try it.
Yeah, and I like everything. You're pretty awful at it at the beginning. Or maybe better than the person that suggested it to you, but all those things just take a lifetime.
A lot of practice.
It's endless.
I understand completely.
Yeah, and there's no arrival. You never go, oh, I figured it out. There's always a new twist every day.
Did it go from? I mean, was this something the pinstriping something you still want to do because you do a lot of illustration now? That's kind of what you do. It's painting and illustrations. Yeah. And whether it's, I don't know if you do a lot of digital work or it's all paint type stuff or what you actually do.
Yeah.
But it went from. So how did you evolve from the car stuff? What made you want to get out of painting? You just hated painting?
Sort of. I mean, actually, painting and bodywork, I find a lot of fun. I'm one of the few people that loves to be dusty. I don't mind wearing a mask and sanding a car for days. I don't mind the wet sand and buff process. I think it's a blast. It's just there's a lot of things about the custom paint industry in the car world that just wears on you so quick. And some people muscle through. Those people are alcoholics now, and that's just not my jam. So, everybody just has a different way to cope, and my way was to just be done. I don't want the line of work that I'm in to change who I am. And I could sense that I was sort of getting to be a pretty difficult person to work with. I'm not necessarily any easier now, but I'm not responsible for anyone's car at this point.
Right.
So, and the industry's changed a lot thanks to social media. I think there's a lot more accountability with shops, and there's just a lot more out there versus the stuff that nobody ever saw before pre-social media. But yeah, I think I worked at one hot rod shop when we moved to California, and my last job there was a SEMA build. I never heard of SEMA. I'd never been to SEMA. So it's just a different world, East Coast to West Coast. And again, it's just sort of early internet days. So staying up for a few days wasn't anything that was new to me, but that experience paired with not getting paid for any of that work, not being able to go to the show, it's a long story. It sucked. That's how I knew I was done. I was like, you know what?
Wow.
If I really want to not make any money, at least I can be happy at home drawing cars. I don't know if I can sell anything. I don't know if anybody's interested in this, but at least I won't go insane. I can make the same $0 staying at home, not sanding cars.
Right.
Easy decision.
But going from doing paint and rubbing cars out and doing all that, transitioning into artwork, that's a big jump.
It sort of was, but to me it didn't seem that big because it wasn't until I got to California and then I was working at the only hot rod shop that I ever worked at in Huntington Beach. The SEMA build was a pretty big company, big builder. So it was that kind of world exposed me to concept renderings, art renderings for build proposals.
Okay.
And that was really the biggest transition that I made into artwork was I immediately started doing build renderings. And I spent a lot of years doing that until I got wore out on that as well. But
that was a good introduction then, going,
yeah,
hey,
it was
I can still do the car
exactly.
stuff, but I can sit at home.
It was a perfect transition. There was a little bit less risk because there's actually a demand for it. It's just kind of getting in front of people and getting, finding the work, of course. But social media kind of bridges the gap for that stuff a little bit. But early on being here, I met Chip Foose and Steve Stanford, and this is something that people do for a living. That's kind of cool. And I did like that aspect of the industry where you could be like, well, I'm just removed enough. I don't mind sanding cars, but I don't necessarily want to do that 24 hours a day. But being part of it in the artistic way is kind of cool. And it has its pluses and minuses as well, but it did make for a pretty soft entry. It was a pretty easy change of gears, except for, learning how to do it.
Right. When you stopped doing the build renderings, were you doing work for customers, or decided I'm going to do my own thing and just sell artwork, or where did it go from that? You're doing customer stuff, designing things, going, let's build your car this way, and it kind of goes off. And so, did you decide to just get tired of dealing with customers on a regular basis, going, this is too hard, I'm going to do my own thing?
Yeah,
or what did you?
I don't know. If I complain, I'm sure it would seem more like more people had trouble dealing with me. I sort of like to do things a certain way, but I mean, when you go through a few long careers in life, you sort of find you grow up a little bit with each of them, and you kind of find out what your limits are. The idea that you have to do one thing for 50 years is just sort of old school thinking. So eventually I feel like it's good to get to a point where you kind of go, I've enjoyed this, I kind of want to do the next thing. I've always tried to mix paintings in with the renderings because it was like a happy place for me where I can just kind of chill, work on artwork, and it just felt a little bit more connected to me. I don't really have to wait for somebody to email me back, tell me about changes, what do we need to adjust. There's a lot of correspondence that happens with that stuff, and sometimes I'm the one that drops the ball. I'm not the one answering the phone or the email, so I'm just as much fault for not being able to stay on top of it. And I enjoyed it for a while because it was a nice way to be involved with builds, but ultimately that side has just as many issues as the rest of the custom car industry, and I just decided that I had reached my limit with it, and that it was really, really difficult to scale. There was things that I wanted to do and I wanted to spend more time doing. And the thing I try to think about is what really keeps me focused on paintings now is the idea that if tomorrow was going to be my last day on Earth, do I want to get a call tonight about the progress on a C10 rendering because it's going to a show next week? I do not want my last day to be, better make sure I get this concept done before. Just no interest, none whatsoever. So the question for me is, what would be like that thing that I want to make sure is the last thing that I'm working on? I don't know what the actual thing is, but what I want to spend my time doing. And it's just paintings, it's just artwork. really what I wanted was freedom. I wanted more time to be down at the beach, more time to spend outside. I don't want to be behind a computer all the time. I don't even want to be inside all the time. Thankfully, I paint really, really fast, so I don't have to spend that much time doing artwork. But the rendering stuff, it was just continuous, and just get messages at 10, 11 at night, like, how are we doing? And we're all in different time zones, so I get it.
Yeah, I'm sleeping.
But no respect, no borders. And I'm sure, if you just tell people, hey, we're 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, it doesn't matter. Eventually the lines get blurred. You have friendly relationships with people. There's nothing wrong with that. It just, eventually it wears on you. You just kind of go, is this really, do I see another 10 years of this? Is this a good way to live? And it was fine. I really, really enjoyed it. But I knew when to be done, so that I didn't create, I just felt like there was some animosity in the work that I was doing. I would sit down to do artwork, especially concept renderings, not paintings. It's a totally different feel. And I always hate it the whole way through.
Start off angry. That's not a way to start off.
No, it's so you find yourself like, all right, let me put a movie on, let me put a podcast on, anything else to occupy your brain so you're not like I could do renderings with my eyes closed. That wasn't an issue. I wasn't interested in what I was doing. So I was like, this isn't a good sign, because at the same time, doing this work I thought was my dream, and I got to a good point where I was making a living at it, and I love that. But once I stopped enjoying it, I thought, you know what? There's tons of other artists that would love to have this work. So let me just free up the space for someone else to come along and do this, who has somebody that has the enthusiasm for it, because I don't need to make an excuse why I don't want to do it. I want to do other stuff, but somebody else would love to do this. So let's make space for somebody else to, I don't need to say yes to everything.
Bravo. Okay, so you went from that and decided I need a change.
Sure.
It's time for a change.
I think also some of that for me comes with being really, really highly productive, and some of that comes from working in the collision industry, in the hot rod industry. It's impossible for you to move fast enough. If you made record time on every job, it's still too slow.
Right, sure.
Based on the person that you work for. That was fast, but we could have gone faster, right? So,
but in this, you're not waiting for materials to dry. In the paint world,
no,
stuff has to cure.
Yeah,
you're waiting.
In reality,
you're waiting.
Whether we want to,
we primed it and sanded it the next day. No, in real life, you don't do that ever.
Ideally not. But again, if we're doing a SEMA project or something where that's just the timeline doesn't exist for it, I get it. But coming from an industry that relies on high productivity, and doing build renderings that way meant not only could I produce them really, really fast. Again, I'm not always the most communicative person, so as long as I've got the information. It also meant in a short amount of time, I'd done a huge volume of work. So it would take me less time to get burnt out because of the amount of work that I was doing. So, maybe if I'd stretched it out a little bit longer and not cranked out so much,
right.
I was doing a rendering every other day or something like that for, 5 or 6 years, which is a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's high flow. And I like to be able to move through stuff, but you just realize you don't ever get any time back to yourself. We live in this area on purpose, so it's like if you're not enjoying it, you're paying for it.
So are you still working at that speed, at that
Not
that
exactly.
pace?
I still paint really, really fast, but I don't set the bar that high for the week because it's not necessary anymore. I make more on the paintings. I do, and that's doing less paintings, but I just push more into social media and strategy there, and that kind of it created a better workflow. I can get things done fast because I work fast, but I'll work on it until it's done. There's no rush to get it done.
Okay. So let's talk about social media. You're kind of a master of social media. I will give you that much. You've done well at marketing yourself.
I appreciate it.
No, seriously. And your little short videos you put together instead of just like, well, here's the thing of drawing. It's like it's an actual production. So besides painting, you actually know how to put together production of beginning to end, how to make this look kind of cool, throw a little music in there, and it has kind of a cool vibe to it. Wow. How did that come about? I mean, what made you go that route with it? Most people don't know to that extent when they're trying to sell themselves.
Yeah.
You actually made it something.
Yeah, thank goodness. I have social media to thank for where I'm at today, actually. But there's a lot of effort behind that. But one of the really interesting things that I learned when I was throwing into artwork full time, 11, 12 years ago, after I came out of the shop and was going into artwork, Instagram had become public, Facebook had become public, and Instagram was kind of in its infancy. And somebody smarter than me said, hey, you're not doing yourself any favors. I was like, Facebook, I don't want to chat with my old high school people like
right.
this. I got no interest in that. but they had mentioned it as a way of marketing and networking. And at that time, I wasn't doing anything nearly what I was doing now. But it kind of gave me a little bit of insight into what reach could be with a little bit of effort. Because even at that time, I was posting a sketch or a drawing every day. So I could get feedback every single day, and I could get visibility every single day. Social media is different now than it was then. But, I think, almost in July. In July, have been on Instagram for 11 years. And there's so much you can learn along the way. And the one thing that really stood out to me when I started doing automotive artwork, a little bit more standalone to renderings, and I started doing car show events. I was really lucky to have guys like Max Grundy help me out, get a spot at shows so that we could vent together. And what I realized pretty quickly was that there's guys, especially other artists, some automotive artists, but artists in general, where their whole deal is a road show. Every weekend we're doing a show, a car show or an art show. So we buy grid walls, we buy the van, we buy the tables, we got prints, we have originals, we take our setup on the road. And just the practical side of me was like, this is such a huge waste of time. There's got to be a way more efficient way than this. We have social media now. I cannot see going to a show every single weekend because it's exhausting.
It's too much work.
Some people love it and they live for it. The difference for me is if I can produce 2 or 3 paintings a week, the only thing that I'm going to do that's going to cost me money is not being here. So if I'm at a show, one, I don't have any artwork to sell, or I have to spend money on prints. So the overhead to me for shows is so high because I can produce better here. Now, I can do artwork live at shows, and that's fine and that's fun. But you back up the car, drive 8 hours in some direction, pay for your booth spot, set up, take down for 2 or 3 days. The shows are fun, but I never came back thinking like, wow, we should do more of that. I was like, no. I think these guys, the older guys in the car art world, have a system that works for them, and this doesn't work for me. So that's why I really leaned into social media. And long term, I think it really panned out, especially where it really became prominent that a lot of people felt like they were playing catch up was during the pandemic. No shows, nobody could go anywhere. But I could keep producing and posting on social media. My world didn't change at all because people were still buying stuff. So it
probably actually helped because people weren't going anywhere.
And it turns out people
had nothing else to do, so it probably worked to your advantage.
Totally. So in a weird way, it worked out that I had kind of laid the groundwork for that already. So I was already there. I didn't have any catch up time. There was just no lag in between, just keeping on going. So I threw into it pretty early, and I pay a lot of attention to the data, the science behind what makes things work, and there's a lot of trial and error in what I do. And currently, with Reels, the short form video, I know early on a lot of people really, really hated it because it was like, this app is for sharing photos, and now videos are the only thing they're getting any visibility. And I decided to do the opposite because I realized that anytime platforms have a new feature, they lean into it really hard. Doesn't matter what it is. So I knew that the only visibility was going to be doing Reels, at least for a little while. And Instagram was paying creators to post Reels, which is a big help. Good incentives based on views. And what it really forced me to do, and I was actually on TikTok prior to that. I'm not on TikTok anymore. Just because I like the idea of doing shorter video. But what it helped me learn how to do was produce shorter videos and kind of try to tell a story in a certain amount of time. And what I really, really quickly realized, just based on the feedback and the comments, was that when I was posting photos before, the paintings are good enough that you may or may not be able to tell that they're a painting.
Right.
But when there's a video, there's a reality to seeing the process because the way that I paint is pretty horrific in the beginning, and then it slowly becomes something. Without the video, it's actually really hard to justify the artwork.
And see, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. So the shorts, I've been watching your stuff for a while, and you're right. Everybody kind of does they'll have their little,
Sure.
And then I watched you, and it's almost like, how fun is it coding out a piece of canvas? It's pretty freaking boring.
Yeah.
Throw some paint on. Well, you kind of made that part kind of an art form. That's like, okay, how can I make it not so boring to have somebody watch me just get a piece of canvas ready? So, and I thought that was really cool that you took it, how can I film this and make it, I'm accomplishing the same end goal, but instead of just rolling out, and letting it dry and go to the next day, you're making an art form out of that. And, I don't know how long it takes you to put together, one of your deals, but it's very well done.
I really appreciate it.
I'm really impressed. It's very well put together.
Thank you.
And it's just for a couple minutes you go, I guess I got some hours in this thing. There's a little time in this thing right here.
Well, there's a reality. Say a painting takes 1 or 2 days, and obviously it's got to be condensed down to 30 or 40 seconds. And for me, that's kind of my goal, 30 or 40 seconds. It's different for everybody. And for reels or shorts or TikTok, it does seem like 30 seconds seems like a stretch because 5-10 seconds is what everybody says, and kind of go, well, I can't show enough of a process in that amount of time. So there's a lot of stuff that, in editing, you're like, well, there's not enough space for this, not enough space for this, not enough space for this. But I really want to take people on a full circle journey, because the idea of seeing something come together from a blank canvas to the end in 30 seconds is actually really cool. But the misstep that I see a lot of people do is just time lapsing. It's too much movement, it's too aggressive, especially if you've got 20 hours of footage, which is not how I shoot to begin with. That's a lot of energy to watch, just somebody running around a screen. So something that's clips in real time, just sewn together really good with music, can feel really melodic. But there's a lot of aspects about the video production that I think are really important to help get people interested in the process. Because the reality is, if people don't watch a video, I may not be able to sell a piece. So thinking of that as the highest importance, like, this video needs to be watchable so that people can see it and that they want to share it. Has to be of something interesting. But the video, think of the painting as one version of art and the video is another version of art, and they have to overlap. But the video can't be treated passively. It is just as important as the art as the painting. The painting can be bad, but if the video is good, people will watch it.
Well, that's how I looked at it. Is your videos, they are art.
Well,
truly. But that's how I figured that's how you're looking at it, going, it needs to be this presentable thing where it's like,
sure.
Now, your customers do you sell artwork? I mean, a lot of it's supposed to be word of mouth. Somebody saw something you did. I've seen different people that have had your artwork, and they're going to tell, who did that? Oh, I had Chris do it. So the guy's going to go to hold you. I want to do this. Well, I'm going to be drawing this and this and this. I'm not going to really do any drawings for you, but I'm going to finish this up. If you want to buy this, I'm going to have this done here in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
So, and they're going to go, okay, fine, I'll wait. Let me know. Can you do it yellow? Well, I'll do it yellow. But I still get to be in control of what I'm doing, because this is my drawing. So do you find that you sell more through just the social media aspect of it by putting your little videos, or just word of mouth with past sales, past customers?
So we have a lot of repeat buyers, which is nice. But I would say social media is really where the legwork is. That's the visibility. That's where people can. So when you go to the website, you're just seeing a couple photos of the painting, which is great, because that's ultimately where you're going to be hanging, right? So you do want to see the photos somewhere. But the video process is sort of the validation. Without the video, the painting is cool when it's finished, but it's seeing how it's done, I think, is actually is what sells the painting, I think.
Do you get your painting done and then you put all your footage together and then put them out at the same time, or how do you?
I try to stagger it a little bit. I'll try to put the painting on the website the night before, so there's a window of time before anybody sees the video, and then I post at a specific time on specific days of the video itself, and about half the time the painting is sold before the video goes live. Most of the time. The other half of the time it'll sell within an hour or so of the video going live. So we never have any inventory here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's the way to do it.
It's not bad, but there's a lot of work to make sure that it works every time. It's not 100%, You win some, lose some. Some don't hit as good as others, and that's okay. But that's the goal anyways, is to sell as quickly as possible. I see a lot of artists that have a lot of their own artwork, and they're their biggest collector, and that's not a good sign.
Is this the goal for a while? Is this kind of your plan to keep doing this for a while? I mean, are you comfortable with this?
Definitely. I really, really like this. There's always a balance and an ebb and a flow between what feels like working too much and not. And for me, I find as time goes on, I must not seem like I'm that old, but still feels like I'm very old. But as time goes on, I always feel like you pretty much have to hit a wall before you can reevaluate. You almost have to get too tired of something before you realize, okay, I need to change something up. So it's hard for me to say how long I can do something. I want to do something until I stop enjoying it, not because I want to get to a point of hating it, because I want to make sure that whatever I spend my time doing is something I'm enthusiastic about. I don't know if down the road that's sailboats or bunny rabbits. I have no idea. I don't look that far ahead.
Right. I
want to enjoy what I'm doing right now, but I also want to be really honest with myself about, when I reach that wall or whatever that is. Hopefully I enjoy this forever, but...
Well, so I was going to ask you, what would be your long-term goals, but they can be sailboats or bunny rabbits, so I don't know what your long-term...
I tend not to think that far ahead, to be honest.
Really? Just
Day by day, yeah. I don't even know
Okay.
what I'm going to paint the next day. I don't really think that far ahead. I just want to make sure that today is good.
Well, a lot of your inspiration now is obviously European cars. That's
Yeah.
kind of your thing.
Yeah.
That's you going to do much hot rod stuff, or is this not your passion? You just like the European?
You know, I like hot rods. I like custom cars. But as time has gone on, the audience for that stuff has changed a lot. And especially pulling a lot of information from social media, you can see that a lot of people in the last handful of years have really gotten into 911s and air-cooled. Ferrari's kind of a different market, but Ferrari's always like an aspiration brand to me. So it means a lot to me, those cars. And I like American classic stuff. It's just where it gets tricky with artwork is that, let's say I like a 57 Chevy Bel Air. It's a car that I actually really, really like from childhood. I'll do a painting that I love or a drawing that I think is really, really cool. And there's a million potential buyers if the wheels were different, if the color was different, because everyone's had one or knows someone that has one that's customized or modernized or updated at some
Right.
point. So there's so much more finite adjustment in what somebody wants. So what I found was that with classic stuff, you were more likely to get a lot of commissions because everybody's got a car that's tailored to them. And I love that. I like that people have that much personal connection to a car. And it's not like that doesn't happen in the Porsche and Ferrari world as well. It's just a little bit more manageable in the European world because most of those cars, the Porsches and Ferraris and the Jaguars and McLarens, they're like works of art right out of the showroom. So they don't take extra emphasis to make them special to a large audience. Whereas the right classic car has to have like some historical significance, an AC Cobra, a GT40, something that it almost doesn't matter what color it is. But yeah, definitely with American stuff, I found that people are a lot more picky about color and wheels and, and I don't mind that. It just means that it's harder to find the buyer. And I want to sell at a 1-to-1 ratio. I don't want to wait for the buyer.
It's funny because the wheels, that's a huge part of the hot rod world.
Of course.
And
it should be.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
Where you're looking at a Porsche or Ferrari and the factory stuff's really cool.
Yeah, it works. And it's not
you could go in aftermarket, but you're playing a much smaller window than what a hot
even
rod
smaller.
guy's gonna
So it's
do.
the opposite
It's
effect.
really small.
Yeah.
So
as soon as you modify a car like that visually, especially for the sake of artwork, you actually lose a huge set of your audience versus the other way around. So it's just kind of a different way. Like I said, I do let a lot of the data and the marketing kind of lead into where what my ideas are because these are cars I like. I wouldn't paint anything that I don't like. But I do also, my job is to sell artwork. So I want to make sure that what I do is sellable. I want to be proud of it. I want to enjoy the process.
Right.
But I'm not going to do something for the sake of anything other than selling.
So your stuff, everything kind of keeps evolving. That's just what we do as an artist. That's kind of. Are you trying different things with marketing and social media? Because obviously you got a handle on it. You've been reaching out, kind of figuring things out. So like putting your videos together, are you going to stick with what you're doing, or are you still trying to change it up a little bit, just so it always has a different feel to it?
Right now, I definitely like the videos right now. And the reality is, so much of social media is like completely out of our control. We put the best things forward based on the data we have, but we don't really know what the results are going to be. And even more to the point of something like Reels and Stories, we don't know what changes are down the road. I don't know what Instagram and Facebook is going to say, hey, let's try this medium, weird, random format that no one's ever thought of, where everybody has to evolve into that. And I like that. I like that idea of kind of changing on the fly the format, because then we have a reason to sort of change and adapt our content style. So I don't really know on that front. Right now, I like videos. It's kind of a good system. It's pretty consistent. And as far as the artwork, to some degree, the artwork's always evolving, or at least I hope that it is. I'm trying to push things differently just to try to create a challenge for myself. That's sometimes where I'll allow commissions to come in a little bit, so that I can do something that I wouldn't normally do and just try to work it in a way.
Okay, all right. Well, that makes sense. You're pushing the envelope. That's what you're trying to.
I'm trying to do it crazy at the same time.
But you're studying the envelope. See, I admire that. You're not just stuck in a rut trying to do. It's like, how can I move it around?
Yeah.
Or it's not the same.
Well, eventually people get bored no matter what you do, right? So by the time you've done 3 or 4 or 5 of something, people have already seen it. So swapping back and forth between like import cars, Japanese cars, Porsche, Ferrari, McLaren, and occasionally some American classic. The variety is one parameter that really helps move things around. But the content style also really, really helps. But on social media, say Instagram, if videos are doing better than photos right now, I'm not going to waste any time posting photos. I want to do whatever version's being seen. And that is allowing social media to kind of guide your process a little bit. But Instagram's not picking what car I'm doing. They're not picking the color. They're not, I just let realize what's out of my control and what's not. And I need to lean into what the variables are that are set. Even if I disagree with them, I kind of go, well, if this is going to help me get seen, that's my goal. Playing it safe is never really a great idea, but having some long-term strategy is good. Like I said, I never know what changes are coming down the road. So I want to do what works right now, but if there's going to be a challenge or a change, it's going to be hopefully within the artwork. How do I make it more interesting? How do I raise the bar? Eventually that gets really challenging too. But like I said, I kind of take everything one day at a time. Right now what I'm doing is works. I don't know what next week brings, but I like the challenge. I like the curveball sometimes, and I don't mind that social media changes things up. Everybody sort of panics. But I follow a lot of other artists. I watch a lot of other artists, and I'm always tempted to message somebody and be like, I should clean up that cut or change the music, or because there's a lot of post process. We take for granted that we have to approach things from the viewer side. I might really like this car and I might really like this song, but is this going to have broad appeal? Picking music from when you went to high school, like, probably is going to do great for your heart and your soul, and you're going to feel great about it, but you're going to alienate another 80% of people, and that's actually a really big deal on social media. Just music choice, pacing, tempo. There's a lot.
Wow. You truly do look at this. There's a
if
whole
I didn't do artwork for full time, I would be social media rep.
But I mean, there's a whole science. You're actually grasping the whole science of the whole social media thing instead of just going, I'm going to use it and sell my. No, you're looking at the science behind it.
You can be punk rock and just do whatever you want, but it's dumb. It's a waste of time. I mean, if your time is like money and you're going to spend your time on something, you want results from that. Whether they're bad results, something that you can measure from. This didn't work, so let me make a change. Some people are really reluctant to make change because they're just really proud of whatever they're doing, even if nobody sees it. Visibility is social media. Our goal is visibility. It should be what you're trying to get. Probably spend more of it talking about social media so far.
No, but it's you. It's you. As I said, I wanted to talk to you about being you. And that's a huge part of who you are. I mean, it truly is. The artwork is there, but there's this whole other, like the video production. That's a whole other type of artwork on top of this. I mean, there's just art.
Yeah.
There's just artwork going on.
I think a lot of people have we all have like movies we love. We like actual cinema or old movies. So there's a little bit of a director in everybody, a little bit of a producer in everybody. So you kind of have to put yourself in that driver's seat and just realize you're going to change your hats a bunch of time while you're doing the artwork and while you're doing the editing or the videoing. Just change your hats to, okay, we're doing production. Right now we're setting up lighting. Now we're focused on painting. The way that I shoot and the way that I edit keeps things really linear and really simple for me down the road so that I'm not exhausted by the time I sit to it. So efficiency is really important to me. So making sure all the steps kind of fall in line. And it's still, at the end of the day, you're sort of crossing your fingers and hoping that, enough people see this, they sell it to somebody. That's really the goal. It wouldn't matter to me if I got 1 million views or 1 view. If that 1 view person bought the artwork, that's all that matters. That's what matters to me. That's my goal, is to sell the artwork. The view number isn't as critical, but it's the larger pool of potential buyers. Totally, there you go. And that's really cool. And I know that. And I always am like super grateful for the position I'm in. I have a pretty large audience considering I draw cars for a living. I think it's a pretty silly job in large scope compared to a lot of people. So I'm like really grateful that I get to do what I do. I couldn't do it without all the support on social media to begin with.
Well, you had to have a vision down the road from a long time ago going, how can I sell myself? I mean, you had to be
sort of.
It's not the same as trying to sell pinstriping, or you're striping graphics, you're outlining, you're lettering different things. It's something that's already going out in a smaller. This you can control it.
Yeah,
you're in your studio. I can control this. If you want it, you can buy it. If you don't want it, I don't care.
It's a little simpler to work that way. I mean, everybody's different, and that's where my comfort level is. I just want to produce something to make that available because at the times of doing pinstriping or trying to sell somebody a custom airbrush job or paint job. Pre-rendering days, you really have to sell them on what it's going to be. That's a lot of effort to say, this is going to be cool, here's the colors we're going to use. You
have to trust me.
Yeah, exactly. There's really high stakes, both for you and the customer, and you have to hope that they're really going to love it enough to actually pay you off when it's done.
Right.
Win some, lose some. I think we've all had situations where it didn't pan out quite a lot. And so the difference there is that's shared risk. I prefer to have all the risk. If I do a cool piece of artwork and it doesn't sell, that's on me. There's nobody else responsible for that but me. Maybe you didn't get views, maybe you didn't get seen, maybe I picked the wrong car, maybe I picked the wrong color. I'd rather have the responsibility of that so I can weigh that against whatever the decision is next.
So you've been in that position then. If it doesn't sell or something, do you try to figure out, doing your homework, going, what is it that turn people off?
Sure.
I mean, do people tell, I mean, do you kind of watch the comments going, a lot of people don't like blue. I mean, so we got a blue one right here.
Sure.
You know, you're going to go, yeah, this one color is not the best color for doing cars because a lot of people don't like it. So I just kind of don't do that as often.
There's always a reason for the colors of the cars, for sure. So it's really, really specific choices. The car choices sometimes can be hit or miss. Even though I'm going to put as much enthusiasm into every single one of them, it's finding somebody that has that nostalgia or that want for that particular car, which doesn't exist in all the choices that I make, because sometimes I paint cars that I like, and I find out maybe I'm the only person that likes this car. Win some, lose some. It doesn't happen as often these days, but it still happens. And, at the end of the day, I kind of go, all right, well, I've got a canvas. I'm just going to paint over this one. So there's videos where I just paint over originals that didn't sell. Yeah, I don't care. So the other part of the science on social media is there's a window of opportunity to sell something once you've got a fresh video. The enthusiasm is never higher than the moment when it's fresh. Somebody sees something a week or two down the road, it doesn't really have the same impact. So this window of availability really isn't that big. And, a week from the time something's posted, I've already done one or two paintings. I've already forgotten about that one. So if push comes to shove and I'm like, I really want to start on something and that's the only canvas I have laying around, that one hasn't sold. That's just, and to be honest, it makes for a better intro in the video anyways.
No kidding.
Yeah. So I don't mind. It doesn't happen often these days, but I don't mind painting.
You're going to get a lot of no! And then
it happens every time, but keeps people watching.
That's true. That's amazing.
I try not to make decisions that are like, is this a good choice? Every now and then I'll do one that doesn't do as well and go, no, maybe next time I'll just keep that one for me.
So we've covered social media, how you market yourself. Yeah. Obviously, you're not this long-term. It's so funny because I talk to people about their goals. What do you want to do when you grow up? Or what do you want to do when you're just going, dude, I don't even know what I'm going to do Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Friday's a long way off. Let me just get through today and tomorrow.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting is if you get to go through a few careers and set goals, and you set goals that are really, really unachievable, and then you get there, it's really hard to know what to do next. And in those times, it's really important to remember just to be really grateful for where you are and just enjoy being there for a little while, because there's always changes and curveballs that we can't see coming anyways. So might as well just enjoy it. I have the cars and motorcycles that I want. I live where I want. I just want to enjoy doing artwork for a while. Then there's something else will come along and change those parameters at some point. But we don't have to look for that reason. Sometimes we can just enjoy for a while. So
before you started doing your paintings you're doing now, and you were doing your airbrushing and pinstriping and doing all that, how did that become a transition? How did you make the transition from this to this?
When we covered going into renderings, from coming out of the paint world, doing renderings, which was not really a big jump, just learning new tools, markers. I had already been airbrushing for a lot of years. So kind of I grew up watching overhauling, so I always loved seeing the clips of how Chip Foose would work. So that was kind of my basis for, marker airbrush. And of course, I'm a big fan of Steve Stanford. And just kind of seeing how those guys' process work kind of gave me some exposure to the tools I need to lean into. And as it turns out, spending so much time airbrushing and pinstriping before meant that a lot of the same tools could actually be used. And still very much true of the paintings now. I still use pinstripe brushes, I still use liners, I still use enamels, I use urethane, I use acrylic. As long as the materials will sort of stick to each other for the most part and communicate, I will use everything to get the end result. I've never found that there's one brand or one tool to go end to end and make it work. Again, kind of coming down to efficiency. I would rather have a handful of different tools and a handful of different paint products, and kind of so that the process feels linear. I'm not trying to do a rendering with just markers and just blending, because that has this look that I don't really like. But if I airbrush everything, that has a look that I don't really, really like. So finding the right tool for each part of the process and just doing it in a straight line, to me, makes a whole lot of sense. But doing a lot of freehand airbrushing and an enormous amount of line work with the illustrations and the renderings, all came from just having a lot of practice with pinstriping and airbrushing prior. Hopefully I'm better now than I was then, but the technique is the same. Hold the brushes the same way, load them the same way. The paints are a little bit different, the surface is a little bit different, but you sort of adapt with that. But I think having done so much freehand up to this point is why things come, I wouldn't say naturally, I just have a lot of practice up to this point. So I was really, really ready to just step into doing everything freehand the way that I do it now, just from all the years practice prior to that. Even though like working in that side of the industry wasn't my favorite overall, I'm like still super grateful that I got to spend time doing all those things because it led me to here. So I couldn't be upset about that. And the other thing about painting actual cars for a living is that I have a lot of visual experience on how colors and lighting work. I make up all my own colors and lighting and all my own artwork. There's no photo references for anything that I paint. Okay. It does not exist. Everything's done from scratch. I have a photo for the car so that I can draw it correctly. I can place the details, but the lighting and the colors are always done from scratch. And I make it up based on how I want the light to flow over the panels to emphasize whatever it is for that. Same with the renderings. And I think a lot of that comes from actually painting cars for a living, being in a booth, being in a shop with a fresh paint, and just seeing how lights kind of work over everything and how that changes the way that the color look on the contour.
Sure.
And that's part of what makes, hopefully, the paintings believable now, is they should look like how paint works.
Makes sense. I never thought about, standing in a paint booth, looking at a color. I mean, yeah, you can figure out where, pearls especially.
Yeah.
Light is crazy with pearls.
A pearl or a candy, anything that has like a high flash.
Because it'll make the transition in the
exactly.
corners, heavy fenders or,
When you see it, when you see how the light is going to change the color on the contours or on the body line. And if you just sort of memorize what those transitions are, it's really easy to work backward and say, any color will do this within this parameter, within this realm. And so then at that point, you're just memorizing fundamentals and you can apply that to everything.
So I guess the years of painting and spending the time looking at that kind of come in handy doing this. Totally. You already know what it's going to look. It's like, I already know because I've already seen it.
And that's part of what makes things move along really fast for me as well. I'm not looking for the right photo because it's not necessary. Not looking for the right color. What I'm looking for is the right angle. So these days I'm trying to take my own photo so I can get the composition right, but I'm not worried about how the light's flowing or whatever color this photo is. I'm going to change it anyways because I want it to look a certain way once it's placed on the canvas anyways, to either emphasize something or go around the detail. There's always a reason for why the lighting is where it is. So it's not, hopefully it's something that makes the artwork unique. It may be photorealistic, but it's not from a photo.
So will you change, you can see a car going, okay, I see, they were up against a building because I can see the reflection of the building going, I don't want that. I want to look like I'm up against a bunch of trees and a couple of bushes. Now you're playing with that. I mean, is that kind of what?
Essentially, if you think about what's going to happen on a canvas or even an illustration where it's mostly white background, whatever is around the vehicle should be reflected in it. But I think what a lot of illustrators get wrong is they use whatever's around in the reference they're using, not what's around on the canvas they're using. If the canvas is blue, then you can reflect a lot of blue back into it. Or if you've got lines going this way or this way, you can reflect that back into it. It doesn't have to be trees. It doesn't have to be what's happening in the car show. It doesn't have to be that white picket fence. As a matter of fact, the stuff looks so out of place when it's painted in something that doesn't, unless you're adding that into the painting, all that stuff looks out of place. It's not a reflection if it's not in that shot with it.
So that's something that's a detail that you like to keep kind of the references.
Yeah.
This, you got to hit. Well, I guess you're doing that when you're laying it all out. Before you even start, it's like, I'm going to do this. I want this in the background. I want these reflections here. And
when you're looking at a photo, there's a lot more noise that doesn't need to be there. It's all interesting, but separate out. This is reflection, but this is ground reflection. This is upper reflection. This is outside. This is out of focus. And 90% of it's useless. You just sort of ignore it, start from a blank place, and just add in what you think needs to be there, because you don't need to overdo it. You just need to show, your idea, but less is more, really.
That works for you.
Yeah, totally.
That's your go-to.
Yeah. Sometimes I overdo it, but sometimes you have to. Just this one isn't interesting enough. Let me push a little bit harder.
Less is more. Like when I was working with a guy named Dick Vale, custom painter. We worked for years together. And his great quote, I remember telling that to Chip, and Chip thought it was a great quote. If you can't make it good, make it gaudy.
That's good.
That's a great quote, man.
Busy it up.
So there you go. It's like, I'm kind of lost on this one, so I'll just throw more crap at it.
Just keep going.
There you go.
Yeah.
We just go that direction.
Not a bad way to look at it.
So
that works.
There's your new slogan.
Yeah.
So Thank you.
Dude, thank you.
Thank you for sitting down and talking with me. I actually learned a lot from you today. I learned stuff that I really had no idea about, and that's great. I'm always about learning. So today was good for me. Other than the dog snoring, which is okay.
Yes, man. Well, I appreciate it.
So thank you very much.
Thank
man.
you.